Elton and I were hanging out. Bernie wasn't there, but Elton and I were hanging out in his log cabin. We each had a log cabin up in the Caribou Ranch, and it's such a beautiful place, beautiful. And we were just in there chatting and whatever, and I had an acoustic guitar, and I was just sitting on the couch, as we were talking, I was just playing along, just whatever. And I was playing something, and he said, "What is that? That's beautiful." And I said, "I don't know. It's just a piece that I've composed. I kind of stole it from a classical piece, but I can't remember what the piece was." And he said, "Oh, that's beautiful." He said, "Play it again." So while I was playing it, Elton got a stack of lyrics that Bernie had sent him for the sessions, and he started going through it. And he said, "I know I've got something in here that reminds me of what you were playing." And he pulled out this lyric, and he said, "Okay, play it again." So I played the piece again, and he started singing "Cage the Songbird," and he actually started singing it, and I played it all the way through to the end, my piece, and he sang it all the way to the end. I mean, it was one of those moments where we looked at each other and we went, "Holy shit, that really is beautiful." How did you do that? I was going like, because the way that Elton can envisage a lyric around a tune is remarkable. That's always been one of his main points of genius that I've always been just so thrilled by. And so, yeah, we wrote that song literally in the time it took to play from the beginning to the end. So we wrote it in like 10 minutes or something. And yeah. And we actually didn't record that on these sessions. We kept it for the Blue Moves album. But that same night was when we wrote Grow Some Funk. And so, yeah, there was all this productive stuff going on all the time. And that evening, though, in Elton's cabin was a really memorable one, because we just come up with something. It was like, "Oh my God, this is great. Can't wait to record this one or that one," So, yeah.
I do remember one time, and we had to stop the recording session because a helicopter showed up with a bunch of lawyers. John Reed was the manager at the time, and so him and a bunch of suits get off the helicopter, and we had to sign contracts for the upcoming tour, the Rock of the Westies tour. So that just destroyed the whole recording vibe right there, the whole creative vibe, that went out the window for a few hours. That I thought that was interesting.
That's an interesting one. I mean, it's the memory of being in the recording room with Elton and Bernie. Bernie was there in those days, and at the recording sessions, and sometimes still writing lyrics. It was such a warm environment. It was such a creative environment. We knew something very special was happening all the time in the studio. Not necessarily breaking new ground, but we were rearranging things. We were rearranging the furniture, and it was looking very good. The house was warming, and that's what I carry with me. And they're the things that I miss now, being in the studio with Sir Elton, working in that kind of environment. And but things move on, and he is constantly changing, because he's got, as I said earlier, this wonderful inquisitive mind about what happens if, what happens when, which is a joy. It's a joy.
Elton hadn't completed the songs, remember, Caleb?
Right.
Well, you guys, because you were with your wife. Did your wife? Yeah. So I was like one of the only single guys. So I was hanging out, and I remember turning pages of Bernie's lyrics as he was still writing material. He was like, again, I saw the magic. I saw it go down just as Caleb did way before this, back in the beginning. So, And he was always so pressured with so much to do, trying to find the time to write in the middle of touring and on the level he was at. The songs were freshly composed, and some of them were actually, as we started doing basic tracks, were being put together. And again, we had Caleb, we had Davey, and Caleb and Davey, especially with Caleb's background working with Elton, it was amazing because there you could see, you know, the trust that Elton had with Caleb's, you know, whatever Caleb's ideas were. It really became a band thing, but the importance of Caleb being there, and then Davey, who had been working with him for a while, the team effort was amazing. It was magic. It really was.
A number of them. One of them was, again, on Billy Bones. It was my first opportunity to play the solo in the middle of the track. And Elton said, "Well, James, why don't you play this, do something in the solo there?" And so I did. And I wrote this thing and I wrote the dun, 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 dun. And the second half, Davey joined me, and he and I just hit it off so hard, so great. Then he played his part, and it ended up being just this totally cool deal. That was exciting for me. One of the more stressy parts was when I had done this solo on Island Girl. And it took me, you know, I was there with Gus, just he and I in the control room, and I was playing all this synthesizer stuff. And the solo, again, it was a solo, but I made it sound like these Hawaiian voices. If you listen to it, it's kind of islandy. And I worked on it for 2 days, and then Gus decided that it wasn't working, so he erased it. And I was kind of like, "Oh, okay. I'm not going to, you know, argue with Gus Dudgeon." And Davey got wind of it and kind of freaked out and said, "I can't believe you erased that. It was great." And so I had to we redid the whole thing again. Only Davey again joined me in the second half, and it turned out to be great. But it was one of those things that Gus, that we could all joke about, um, because we didn't have the kind of recording capacity back then that we do now. Yet, and we did not have endless tracks, and so you had a limited amount of space. So I was probably taking up 12 tracks with my solo with all these different parts. But we ended up working it out. What else was there? I really loved working on Robert Ford because I was standing next to Elton in our cabin. I think it was called Ure, maybe. And he was at the piano, and I was there, and I saw him take the lyric of Robert Ford out of a pile and put it up on the piano and instantly just write the song as I was watching. And I've never seen anything like it. And he played it through a couple of times, then he went to bed. And is he going to remember that tomorrow? I mean, and of course he did perfectly. And I think the beginning of the song, for me, the first couple of verses are just me and Elton. And those kinds of moments were pretty thrilling. I mean, again, I'd never had those kinds of opportunities. I'd never had all that equipment. You know, they basically said when I got the job, "What equipment did you want?" I go, okay, two ARP 2600s, an ARP 2500, a Mini Moog, clavinet, Fender Rhodes, Wurlitzer, and a Mellotron, maybe. And of course, they were all there, ready to go. And so I had all those great instruments to call upon. And when you have great sounds, composing they kind of compose themselves. You know, I mean, I can understand why, uh, like Strawberry Fields, like Paul, I think, played that dee -don, dee on a Mellotron. And that part came because of the sound of that instrument, I'm sure, because it's just the way it goes. And so I had a lot of tools that were really good and useful. And then listening to Caleb and Popey, they were just so great. and Kenny, of course. And the rhythm section was just so strong that somehow my parts just fell into place. And I don't think there was ever a collision of everybody trying to steal the spotlight ever, because it was just, and some people thought that was the best band he'd had. I think every band he's had is the best band he's had. I mean, so, but it was good.
Jim Guercio rented a helicopter, which was completely illegal to land. And we got on the helicopter and flew during the Rock of the Westies session. We flew to Fort Collins, and there's real controversy about this, because we went, and there's some footage on YouTube, I've seen it, where we were backstage with the Stones and having a great time, and there was going to be this huge party with Ahmet Ertegun and Barry Fay. All these big shots were having a barbecue at Caribou after the gig. But Elton got asked to come. They said they introduced him as Reg, if I remember right. And he had a Dodger Stadium. He had a Dodger coat on, and he had a cowboy hat. And he went up and played, but he never got off the stage. And Mick and Keith, we're backstage partying, having a great time. Everything's groovy. And all of a sudden we hear, "Everybody from Caribou, get the fuck out of here," or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, we had to leave.
We
were ordered off, and Elton came off the stage, and it was Caleb. Remember, it was you and Davey and Elton and me in the limo, because there was no helicopter to take us back, and we were in the limo and had a drive from Fort Collins back to Caribou. And the whole time Elton didn't say anything, and we're like we're going, wow, I don't know what happened there, but who cares? They suck. Let's go back up to Caribou, man. They suck.